Jeremiah again. And I'm reading to you today from the New Jerusalem Bible, 8:18 to 23. Incurable sorrow overtakes me. My heart fails me. Hark, from the daughter of my people, the cry for help ringing far and wide throughout the land. Is Yahweh no longer in Zion, her king no longer there? Why have they provoked me with their idols and their futile foreign gods? Harvest is over, summer at an end, and we have not been saved. The wound of the daughter of my people wounds me too. All looks dark to me. Terror grips me. Is there no balm in Gilead anymore? Is there no doctor there? Then why is there no progress in the cure for the daughter of my people? Who will turn my head into a fountain and my eyes into a spring of tears, that I can weep day and night over the slain of my daughter people? My little brother called. It was one of those calls which begins with a kind of heightened enthusiasm in the greeting. As much as you love each other, you don't call each other often enough. And so when I saw that it was my brother calling, I answered, "Hey, how's the weather in Texas? Is it hot enough for you down there?" But the voice that I heard in response, a voice as familiar to me as my own, was unnatural. It was stretched thin. And I interrupted his weather report. "Roger, what's wrong?" "It's Julia," he said, and his voice broke. And then he described for me the previous day. Julia, my infant niece, had become increasingly unwell, pulling up her tiny knees close to her chest, red-faced and sobbing. She could not be comforted. Then they opened her diaper and saw all the blood. At the hospital, after they had done the intake paperwork, they were told to just take a seat in a crowded waiting room. And for what seemed like an eternity, Roger walked the waiting room floor, trying to calm his crying daughter. Do you know this routine? One arm under a padded bottom and the other arm pressing that baby's heart close to your heart. A hand hovering over the fuzzy little head with protection and care. I could picture my brother's hands on her head. Those hands which even at 14 could do an octave and two on the piano. His tall, willowy frame doing as I saw Jessica doing with Freya just a few moments ago. Moving and swaying and comforting. With the cries of his daughter directed straight into his heart. His own wail, he said, finally pierced the crowded waiting room. "I lost it, Chris," he said. And he called out loudly, "Why isn't somebody helping her? We need a doctor now." Jeremiah 8, the Berean Study Bible. My sorrow is beyond healing. My heart is faint within me. Listen, the cry of the daughter of my people. Is there no balm in Gilead? Is there no physician? Then why has the health of the daughter of my people not been restored? Jeremiah is known as the weeping prophet, and no text illustrates why better than this one. Bible scholars debate who the speakers are in chapter 8. Is the lamenting questioner Jeremiah, the prophet, crying over the nation of which he is a citizen? Or is the lament the voice of Yahweh, the heartsick divine parent, grieving over the cries of his daughter, Jerusalem, Judah? Or is it a personified Jerusalem, questioning the very theology which has always undergirded its existence, which is now existentially threatened? Or maybe, if the Bible translators will just help us out a bit, inserting those spaces and punctuation marks as they do so well, we could see it as a choral reading of overlapping voices in conversation with one another. I side with those who hear this as a conversation in which God's voice is the one weeping openly. The eternal divine is personified in the form of a loving father whose heart is pierced by the cries of his daughter, whose health has not been restored. Where are the doctors? Where are the famed medicines and cures which promise they will fix everything? He's got the whole world in his hands. And as these big hands cradle his weeping daughter, her brokenness breaks him. Who will turn my head into a fountain and my eyes into a spring of tears, that I can weep day and night over the slain of the daughter of my people? Asks the Divine Father. 2 Sundays ago, we followed Jeremiah to the potter's house. The text held potential for molding and reshaping God's people, just as a potter molds the wet and yielding clay. But we also heard the crash of hardened pots, as Jeremiah foretold the complete breakdown of a divided and idolatrous nation bent on greed. Again today, we hear the sound of pots shattered, pots too hardened to self-interest, to be remade. For the brokenness of the daughter of my people, I am broken, cries the Father. Today, I have been reading Jeremiah to you from a variety of different translations, hoping to somehow turn the text's slant in a way that moves the message from a time long past to the time present and future. We now have close to 1,000 different English translations of the Bible, beginning with Tyndale's New Testament from 1526 and stretching to versions being published this year. Each one is slightly different. And so if you open your Pew Bible, which is the Revised Standard Version, or you use your cell phone to pull up the New Revised Standard Version, and you go to Jeremiah 8, you will not find anywhere the word daughter. And yet you've heard me read that word repeatedly from the New Jerusalem and the New English Standard and the American Standard and the King James versions. There is a repeated Hebrew phrase in Jeremiah 8, variously translated as my people, or my poor people, or my dear people, or the translation I prefer, the daughter of my people. The difference in translations hinges on one little word, bat, as in bat mitzvah, that coming of age ceremony for 12-year-old Jewish girls. One little word, B-A-T, bat, which means daughter, and which I deem far too important to gloss over in translating Jeremiah 8. The Hebrew text says, bat ami, not just ami, the daughter of my people, not just my people. As Jeremiah receives this distress-filled revelation from God, he sees a gendered image. And while that feminine qualifier, bat, can certainly be interpreted through softening diminutive phrases like dear people and poor people, I find it unhelpful to flatten out the feminine distinction. I believe the cry of the daughter, originally stated in the passage, is a power which deserves to be named. This month in the magazine Scientific American, there's an article about the changing views in the U.S. regarding climate change. Researchers wanted to know what it takes to increase public acceptance of the decades-old scientific consensus on the evidence. about human responsibility for rising global temperatures. The scientific consensus is overwhelming that fossil fuel emissions, current agricultural practices, and deforestation are already having devastating effects on the web of life upon which we all depend. And yet, some skeptics remain unmoved. A team of social scientists and ecologists from North Carolina State University conducted an extensive study which found that children can increase their parents' level of concern about climate change because, unlike adults, their views clearly aren't the result of an entrenched political ideology. Parents really do care what their children think, and a heartfelt cry from a child can break through where decades of scientific reports have not. In the study, fathers and conservative parents, I'm quoting here, showed the biggest change in attitudes, and daughters were more effective than sons in shifting parental views. A daughter's cry reaches deep into the soul. Just ask Jeremiah. A prime example of the phenomena, of course, is the Swedish teenager Greta Thunberg, who brought her cry to our Congress this week. Founder of a global youth movement, School Strike for the Climate, also called Fridays for the Future, her initial efforts a year ago in Sweden blossomed this weekend into 3 million young people taking to the streets on Friday, crying out to adults to heed the signs of the times and to do something about the climate. Greta's influence over adults began with her own parents when she fell into a deep childhood depression a few years ago, after learning about the mass extinction of species already underway and recognizing the irresponsible inaction of world leaders who must now be charting a new course. Last Wednesday, Greta testified at a joint meeting at the U.S. House Foreign Affairs and House Climate Crisis Committees in Congress, and she handed them a thick scientific report and said, "I don't want you to listen to me. I want you to listen to the science and do something." What Greta knows is that already 200 new species are becoming extinct every day. Both fauna and flora are disappearing day after day after day as we grown-ups go about business as usual. Whole plant species are now disappearing at 500 times the usual rate of extinction. Biological diversity continues to be lost in our rivers, oceans, prairies, forests, jungles, and the sky. The sky, where today we have 30 billion fewer birds than when I was in high school. A reduction of almost 30% in less than half a century. Permafrost in the tundra has already begun, the dreaded thawing which scientists originally warned us of decades ago, that it would begin at the end of this century, creating a domino effect as ancient carbon is released into the atmosphere from the frozen peat bogs. Thaw of the frozen bogs, which take up as much as 80% of the landmass of western Siberia, will release billions of tons of methane into the atmosphere. Our failure to reduce carbon emissions has resulted in this thaw arriving now, 70 years ahead of schedule. By virtually every measure, the doomsday prophecies, the Jeremiahs of our generation, the scientists, have been understated, not overstated. They predicted destruction of planetary life happening more slowly than it has been. Jeremiah 8:21, the contemporary English version. "My people are crushed, and so is my heart. I am horrified, and I mourn." Jeremiah 8:21, the 21st century King James Version. For the hurt of the daughter of my people am I hurt. My face is blackened with astonishment that takes hold of me. Thankfully, views in the U.S. are finally beginning to change, partly led by daughters and sons who have captured the attention of parents who love them and realize they have not been doing what love requires to protect the future for their children. The change is also influenced, of course, by the first-hand experiences that former skeptics are now having themselves. Increased intensity and range of fires, deforestation, catastrophic hurricanes, droughts, floods, desertification, depleted fisheries, toxic algae blooms, the list goes on. These canary in the coal mine warnings may yet shift attitudes enough that we will force our failed leaders into action, while our efforts still have hope of reversing damage that has been done, while the clay is still moist enough to reshape and mold a different, a livable future for the children. I understand that it is psychologically devastating to acknowledge the full force of what our children are facing. I understand Jeremiah's weeping. Almost every time I pick up a magazine, my husband comes over and says, "Are you all right?" Because I'm crying. Again, I'm seeing the faces of our granddaughters and our grandsons coping with this future. I understand Jeremiah's cry. The poet said, "'Tis a terrible thing to love what death may touch." And I love this world that God made for us. That long ago conversation with my brother about his trip to the ER with his baby girl was dislodged from my memory by encountering the Jeremiah text this week with all that father-daughter prose. 'Tis a terrible thing to love what death may touch. Many of us know the deep resonance of that truth. Today, my niece Julia is a sophomore at Texas Christian University, majoring in musical theater. She is strong and kind and healthy and whole because, as it turned out, there was a physician in the Dallas ER, and medicines and parents who were paying attention to the warning signs that something was very, very wrong. Julia's little body was unable to process milk, even her mother's milk. Returning her to health required comprehensive changes in diet, overseeing for many years in her young life by skillful practitioners of first-rate medical science. Of course her parents listened, not only to her insistent cries, but to the scientists who they knew could help her. What parent wouldn't do everything required to secure a healthy future for a beloved child? Today, Roger's children and mine, your grandchildren and mine, require something much more inconvenient, even than a trip to the ER and switching to expensive specialty baby formula. They require of us, first of all, to acknowledge the truth that something is very, very wrong in the way we are using up this planet. They require us to get our heads out of the sand and to insist our leaders change from a course that is disastrous. Land use policies, energy policies, transportation policies, consumption habits, all of these must change for our children to have a livable future. They require us to make sacrifices in our lifestyle, putting a higher premium on planetary health than on our personal preferences and conveniences. In solidarity with the school strike for the climate, preachers like me in pulpits around the world have been challenged to dig into the scripture and speak a prophetic word this morning on behalf of the world that God so loves. So don't blame me if the lectionary cycle keeps giving us Jeremiah week after week. While we cannot, with integrity, ignore the prophet's dire words, they are not the last ones I want to leave you with. Instead, I invite you to hear the hopeful imaginings of a high school student in San Francisco, Elizabeth Levy. She wrote what she calls a wish for the earth for this day. Imagine the earth, large and full, with swirling blue oceans surrounding masses of land, with streaks of soft white clouds above. Imagine everything occurring on this earth in this very moment. A girl in a bright pink sari walking home from school. An old man pulling a donkey with rough, calloused hands. A young couple saying "I do" as their mothers cry in the audience. A baby wailing for food his parents cannot give. A woman standing over her kitchen table addressing a pile of letters. Imagine the earth, large and full, holding all of this, all of us. The earth that gives us the greatest gift of all, the ability to be alive, the ability to feel the pride of the girl, the exhaustion of the man, the excitement of the couple, the hunger of the baby, the purposefulness of the woman. We all have different beliefs, we all belong to different faiths, but let us all feel joy and pain together. Let us all come to save our world together by promoting energy conservation, energy efficiency, renewable energy. Let us help our world become a place where all beings have access to sufficient, sustainable energy. And by doing this, let us do more. Let us help our world become a place where everyone is treated equally without bias. Let us help our world become a place filled with peace among the diversity of people, ideas, and beliefs. Let us help our world become a place filled with boundless loving kindness and belief in the genuine good in humanity. Let us help our world become a place where everyone's basic needs are met and every child born is able to reach their full potential. Let us help our world to become a place where success is measured by kindness, love, and generosity instead of material wealth. Imagine an earth where these ideals are realized. Imagine yourself with the help of the people in this room and allies throughout the world beyond, making these ideals become a